Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about Cannabis 2.0. Washington is considering overhauling its cannabis regulations. On the line with us is Dan Kemmis, our CBD correspondent with Good CBD Products.
Hey, I'm here. Good morning. Good morning to you, sir.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think that was Walter Cronkite. So this Yahoo Finance article is actually a press release. It's a press release from the Liquor and Cannabis Board, which is our regulatory authority here in Washington State, and Rick Garza. And so 5 years after Washington launched its pioneering cannabis market, officials are now proposing an overhaul of the state's industry rules. We've had really bad problems for the last 18 months with our seed to sales software tracking. The state requires data to be available to anybody who wants it, and right now that's not happening. So there's been 3 different companies. I think there's BioTrack, MJ Freeway, and then Leaf, and none of them have been able to work. So the LCB, or Liquor and Cannabis Board, is calling Cannabis 2.0, an interview with the Associated Press that was released last night. So in an effort to get a picture of what the legal market looked like over the next 5 years after spending the last 5 years in a heavily regulated market. So the reaction as the difficulties of building an industry from infancy absorbed the agency's attention. So this article is going into basically how to move forward without having data. So how do you regulate without having oversight? Definitely an issue with companies. We just saw the producer processors having to shut down for 36 hours in order to upload this new software, which broke immediately. So that put a lot of people on the back end, although I heard that there was plenty of things to do on the checklist of things that don't have a top priority. But when you can't work for 3 days, that's pretty critical. And that's exactly what happened with some of these businesses in Washington State.
Everybody thinks that the cannabis business, everybody's rolling in cash. It's not that way. And there's a lot of businesses that are in the margin. And then, you know, as a normal human, if you hear, 36 hours, you're like, what's the big deal? Oh, it's a huge deal, because it didn't just stop there. It's been not working for a long time. And then once again, you know, that whole fanfare and then wah, okay, that stuff, again, cost of doing business. And then again, I mean, at one level, if you're somebody in Washington State cannabis, to hear that they might overhaul the rules, okay. I mean, again, it's been an ongoing slog. Changing it again, how's that going to work out? Yeah, tough biz, no doubt.
So one big issue that the board thinks that they need to address is abandoning the state seed to sale cannabis tracking software. It's been long beset by the software issues. Article goes on to say that sometimes grinding businesses to a halt in favor of a system where businesses report their transactions to the board and then they're audited. Right now, I think they're still on spreadsheets. They have to send like an Excel spreadsheet every day. So another issue is whether to prepare to allow cannabis exports, as Oregon did this year in the event that federal government approves it. I think that's pretty easy to say that if the government approves it, everyone's going to do it. It's just another commodity.
Yeah, but, you know, I like the idea of getting ready early. Right? Here's the thing, because it is going to happen. And if it is going to happen, being in a place where you're already, you know, where your rules are in place rather than having to run down and have a committee meeting. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, let's get that done now.
What makes more sense is if the States Act passes, it would kick the can down the road to the states. And so if we implement that now, then we can basically get an entire West Coast, including Canada, import-export agreement in place. So this article says that for the next session for the legislature, the board has approved 2 bills. One would create what would some critics describe as a long overdue social equity program, encouraging greater ownership of marijuana businesses by minorities, women, and military veterans. Part of the rationale of legalizing cannabis in Washington in 2012 was to remedy the disproportionate effect the drug war has had on people and communities affected by the war on drugs. But my minority ownership of cannabis businesses in this state remains really, really low. So Washington State isn't currently issuing any more cannabis licenses. 11 of the more 500 retailers have surrendered their licenses, apparently. We're friends with one that hasn't opened up because the area that he got his license approved in isn't really worth opening. So there's that. And then businesses would be eligible. So for the minority program, women, minorities, veterans, or a majority ownership group that are members of a protected class under state anti-discrimination law. So the legislation would also create a technical assistance program run by the Department of Commerce that would provide grants totaling at least $100,000 per year to help minority women, veteran-owned businesses navigate the licensing or compliance or finance training by equipment software facilities. So Washington Cannabis Business Association and industry group said that it agrees that there's a need for social equity programs and has been working on its own version. And as a chair of the Cannabis Lounge Committee for Washington State to overturn the felony on cannabis lounges, we're also implementing a social equity program as well as something that's going to help small businesses and access for medical patients, veterans, all of the same issues.
Well, as somebody who advocates for education, I would just say that, that grant size is awesome, but it would be neat to find more, because ultimately, to bring somebody to speed in this space and to give them a fair footing, right, is a serious effort. And again, I think it's a great kind of move. I like it.
So the other legislative proposal is to allow struggling small producers, or what's called Tier 1. It's the smallest size, limited to 2,000 square feet of plants. So what they want to allow is to have on-site sales. So patients have long complained that they've had a hard time finding medical-grade cannabis. So to go through additional testing for pesticides, heavy metals, retail stores. So they said the proposal would help patients give the growers an incentive to offer more medically compliant products if they can have direct sales. So Tier 1 growers would sell patients on site with other growers at indoor farmer market style locations or by delivery. Local jurisdiction would have to approve, and to avoid competition with other licensed retailers, the growers or farmers markets would have to be at least 3 miles away from established retailers. Any proposal to allow delivery or sales by small growers is certain to be controversial, as other retailers might object to additional competition, according to Garza and the LCB, or Liquor and Cannabis Board.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Unless you built your business on the last set of existing rules, I'm all for changing the rules, making things better. And yet at the same time, the fact of the matter is you've asked a lot of people to do some very complex things for the last few years under the existing rules, and they've built successful businesses in these spaces, and now you're going to come along and, quote, fix it all? Well, that, again, that's a complex pill to swallow some days as a small business owner.
And with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.